Hello and welcome to this episode of Self-Made. I'm your host, Dee Brown, CEO. Joining me today are entrepreneurs, Wes and Mia Michelle Henry. They are serial entrepreneurs that own a variety of businesses, both in Illinois and Arizona. Mia, Wes, welcome to Self-Made. I'm glad to have you all on the show today.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. So one of the things we do here is we try to set the stage so that our viewers can understand your journey. So I want to start by asking you about your early years. Growing up as a child, tell me about where you grew up and what your younger years were like.
Well, I grew up in Southern California, Monrovia, Duarte, Pasadena, and my parents were entrepreneurs and also activists during that time. And so I had a lot of loving people around me, supporting me and really training me in what to do now and where I am right now.
Wes, what about you?
I grew up in a small island called Trinidad and Tobago. So very poor, I think compared to the United States standard, but very loving. My grandmother helped raise me, so was my aunt. And I came to the United States at the age of 14, and I've been here ever since.
So what was life like making that transition to the United States? At that age, you're in middle school, I'm assuming, and getting ready to transition to high school very soon. What was that like?
In the Caribbean islands, we're much more relaxed. I can go sit on a mango tree or guava tree and just eat some fruits and, go run around with my family.
Yeah.
I remember coming to the United States, and we also didn't have any drinking age, so to speak.
Right.
So I came to the United States, I had to learn and adapt to the rules and guidelines. So my mother was able to assist me. But first time seeing snow was also a surprise. So, but I've adapted and done very well since then.
So, Mia, what about you? What was high school, your early years like growing up in Southern California?
Well, because my dad owned a business, he had a commercial janitorial business. It was like we worked, I definitely developed a work ethic from him. Since I could pick up a trash can, then I would do that or learn. And then remember one thing with my dad is that I always wanted to learn how to do windows. Because he's like, you're a champion when you can do windows. I never got to windows. So I love my life, and my family was very supportive. My mother and father worked together, and they showed me what that looked like, what marriage looked like, and working in a partnership, not only in a marriage, but in a business.
Right. And so when did the two of you meet?
It was by accident, actually. A blind date. I have a good friend of mine, which was the best man of my wedding. We went to college together. And we came in, and she happened to see me first. The setup was actually for him to meet her. So I was fortunate enough to be that fellow. And we just started talking after that. And the first date was a family reunion. So I had to meet the whole family. Didn't expect that.
You're going to sink or swim.
Oh, man. So that I did qualify. So, and that's how it began. And
is that how you recall it, Mia?
Well, not quite. No, it was a blind date. I didn't know who I was going to meet because my girlfriend had told me, just some nice guys want to meet a nice lady. So I said, okay, why not? Free meal. And when he walked in, it was love at first sight. Never believed in that. Really? But just heard that this is going to be your husband. And I was like, what? And I actually went quiet. I talk a lot. Yeah. And I said nothing at the date. I just kind of sat there and was really quiet. And here we are, 25 years later, still married.
So talk to me about your early education. I know you are an educator by background, and you, Wes, had time in aviation. So tell me about your educational journey and how you ended up in aviation and education. And Mia, I'll let you go first.
Well, my mother was an educator, and I think as a little kid, I was always like having my dolls set up and teaching them and stuff. So I went into education. It seemed like a natural fit, and I love children, and that's just how it ended up. I never thought I was going to go into take education and then go into counseling and then go into being an entrepreneur. I just thought I'd always be a teacher because I love teaching people. So did that. But once I got into school, I realized how many of the students really they were dealing with other traumas and stuff, and I couldn't teach them before I got to their heart.
Right.
So that's why I decided to go back and get my degree in counseling, and I love that. So.
And so, Wes, you were in aviation. Talk to me about that.
Yes, I went to Catholic school, and I wanted to go into the academy, the Air Force Academy. So I didn't know the protocol. Obviously, it was not being formed properly. So my alternative was to go to aeronautics school. So I wanted to be a pilot. I was told that there's a cost factor involved.
Right.
So I choose avionics instead. So I worked in aircrafts, doing modification, EFA system, autopilots, going and doing install warning tests for a number of years. And I transitioned out of that. So as I get a little older, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. So I transformed and I went into financial services, insurance. And I did that for a couple of years before I started my business in setting up and owning a couple of markets, mini markets. And that's what led us into other opportunities.
So talk to me about your mini market business. Where were they located in?
They were in Arizona. There's a number of, we call women infant children, which is WIC. And there was a niche market for them. Rather than going onto the grocery stores and waiting in lines, what we decided to do was specifically cater to that client. So my son, who is now 33, having his own business now, assisted me in doing so. And we went on, we solicited, we get those clients, they came in for their products. Most of the products were already set up for them, so they just give us a call, contacted us, we provided to them. And so that's how we started. And we had an event up happen about 4 to 5 of those markets, and later on we no longer have them. We just got rid of them, and we moved into another business segment.
So what was your biggest challenge? Moving from Trinidad, going through avionics training, and then into entrepreneurship. What did you find to be your biggest challenge?
The biggest challenge was always funding. So a lot of it has to be saving our own fund to be self-fund.
Right.
And that was always a challenge. That's the ability to wanting to scale and having to find the capital and and the individuals to do so to help.
Right.
That was the biggest challenge. But for me, I've never been the person that wanted to get into business to do things and just for making a lot of money and buying nice things. I have a saying that is that if we stop trying to impress based upon what we possess and do the best we can to help those that are in distress,
right,
which is our communities, then that is more purpose-driven. So I became more purpose-driven in the things in which I try to accomplish from a business standpoint.
Mia, tell me about your journey from education to entrepreneurship. How did you make that leap?
Well, in the early years of education, it allowed me to stay home with my kids,
Mm-hmm.
and it allowed Wesley to be the entrepreneur because, let's face it, when you start off, a lot of times we talk about the challenges, but also, you may not have the money to just create a stable life. We have
Right.
4 children,
Right.
so I stayed in schools, and as the kids started getting older, and I think also just the stress of teaching in that environment, and not really being able to be free and do the things that I really wanted to do and I could see it would make a bigger difference. Wesley, I would come home and Wesley would be like, you just need to start your own thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, no. You always think, no, I would need more. I don't know. I'm not a business person. I wouldn't know what to do. And then this opportunity came available. He saw a building. It was a daycare before. I had been a child care consultant with my mother, and the building was a mess. It had been empty, and so he came to me and said, do you want to start a daycare? I was like, absolutely not. I want to leave Tucson when the kids graduate, and I want to be out of here. And he came back a couple times, and the building was still there, and I just trusted that I was supposed to do that. and it's been operating about 7 years successfully. It's trauma informed, and yeah, it was the scariest leap, but once I did, it was a natural, because I took my natural skills from education,
Right.
put it into my school, and now my focus is really breaking the pipeline to prison for our students, and they are doing fabulous.
So tell me more about your daycare business. What's the name of the daycare, and talk to me more about what you're doing to break that pipeline to prison.
So the child care is called Growing Steps Child Care Center. It's in Tucson, and basically allowing children. We know when they don't read at a certain age that is a pipeline to prison if they don't read by 3rd grade.
Right.
And so basically pulling those, making sure they're reading, having those skills, reading books to them and things of that nature. So that's, basically just being at a daycare that's valuable, and
Right.
the daycare that has a quality in the neighborhood. A lot of child care centers people can't afford, so they go to home daycares. Not to say that those are bad, but a lot of times they don't have the foundation of education to be able to pour into the children, so that when they go to school, they're ready and prepared.
Right.
Yes.
And so, Wes, is this a joint venture between you and your wife as far as the child care, or do you have your own separate ventures going?
Well, she's the boss. She's always going to be the boss. I'm sure you know that. So yes, it's her daycare, even though I'm participated. I've been in sales for a very long time. And my son and I, we started a solar company, which he runs currently in Arizona successfully. And we wanted to find the right people to run the daycare so we can go in places and do, as I say, purpose-driven.
Right.
So that's what brought us here to Illinois with One Village. And we came into that together when we purchased the building and put in a business plan together to help the community, because we saw, as I said, in distress, we saw a community that needed. And I said, okay, hon, that will take care of itself. Let's go ahead and transition into something a little bit what you want to do that I can get support behind. And that's what brought us here.
So, Mia, tell me about One Village.
So my idea for One Village is really, what I learned as a therapist is that, not only do you go to the therapist maybe 1 hour a week, but then the rest of the day you need to be in community. And so my idea was actually to create a space where we have a wellness center there, and then other spaces where people can be, throughout the week or the day, where they can connect with one another. So One Village is going to be located in the East Bluff area in Peoria, Illinois. And that's an area that has a large African-American population. My work is really about historical and generational breaking trauma and breaking those patterns so that we can live in a thriving life and no longer in the survival. They can have therapy there. There'll be a coffee shop where people can come and work. And at night, there can be spaces for them to do spoken word and those type of things. And all of our spaces really are by Black people, with Black people in mind, where all are welcome. Spaces, I've gone to places and, didn't feel comfortable being in a space because it didn't feel like I was welcome. And so we want to create spaces where people can come and they can feel welcome. So that with the coffee shop, there'll also be a market with fresh fruits and vegetables. Our experience with the markets, we realized that,
Exactly.
We need to have healthy food because if your food is not right, your mind's not right, right?
Right. Yes.
And so providing that, that is in that area, it's a food desert. It has, markets that are selling alcohol and that kind of stuff, but not really healthy foods for families.
Right.
And then we'll have a recording studio. We have partners that were once with Death Row, and so they're coming in and helping us set that up. Because we know a lot of youth have a lot of creativity, being able to come and do podcasts and share their music. And then the last thing, a beauty shop, barber shop, because, the ladies and the men like to be pampered a little bit.
Right. So where did this vision come from? What inspired you to put this plan in motion?
I think just my family. My father's just always working so hard that I realized that I could do that as well, and then going places and not feeling like welcome or only seeing myself. So I'm a creator just by nature. I like to create all kinds of things, and business is just creation.
Right.
Seeing what you want to create and what you want in the world, and if it's not there in the world, then create it.
Right.
And also places where our dollars can stay in our community. I used to train with. I used to go to the conference with George
George Fraser.
George Fraser, and I learned by going to him that if black people own more businesses, then we get to hire who we want as well. And we can open that door up because other people have those, and they hire their people first, and our people are hired last a lot of times.
Yes, absolutely.
So Wes, you've mentioned several times about being purpose-driven. Talk to me about what that means to you.
Within our community, we spend money already. I mean, this is a HBCU, so 3 of our children. My daughter goes to Howard. We have 2 sons that attended Morehouse, So, and purpose-driven to me is you can make all the money you want to make, drive the nice cars, buy the nice house. After that, what? Who do you have to impress? So purpose-driven to me is doing something that our community can basically have a hold on. And that is going into the community, doing things, teaching them to change their attitude. When we look at, from a prison standpoint, that's what we should talk about with our school, I don't think a lot of the youths understand that they get paid 2 cents to 40 cents an hour to work.
Right.
So why do the things to go in there to do that? So they don't know that. And it starts with our thinking. So my goal is to change the mindset and to belief of, so everything begins with that. So my purpose is truly to do what I can to change the mindset of the community, but more in the youths. And the way to do that is to go hands-on. And in sales, I've done door-to-door, so I have no problem going directly and have communications with individuals. And that's what I like doing. So money come and go, you will die and leave it, but obviously it's important. It's an important resource. But that's how I feel. So that's what I do.
No, absolutely. In other words, that the work that you're doing supersedes financial gain.
Absolutely.
Exclusively.
Absolutely.
There's a higher purpose, higher calling.
Absolutely.
And Mia, you mentioned about trying to deal with generational trauma. Talk to me about generational trauma and the type of things that communities of color, children of color, have had to deal with that you're trying to combat with your programs.
Yeah, so for 500 years plus, we've been dealing with survival. And now is the time for us to really, where we're thriving, there's opportunities that are available, but they're showing now, science is backing up the fact that it's, things are left in your DNA from your ancestors. So the fear of actually being seen and stepping out there and creating your own things, that has to be dealt with, and it can be very painful. So the kind of work we want to do is, one, build more capacity for therapists. So we'll be a training center. Our center will be a training center for other therapists to be culturally competent, because black people are coming out of all of this segregation. Even with Joyce Floyd, it triggered me after that. And so I realized even more how important my work was to be done, is that if I can help one person heal from, and one family break any kind of things we're seeing in patterns with our eating habits, whether it's about abuse in our homes, healing from that and having a healthy family so that we can all thrive, that's our ultimate goal.
It's pretty well, I think, documented in African American communities that oftentimes people deal with traumatic situations, whether it is abuse by a relative, sexual, physical, verbal, and oftentimes those abuses go unreported. And so people get older and they have that trauma that they live with, and they try to figure out ways to deal with it. I've heard people talk about having, nervous breakdowns later in life from dealing with trauma that happened earlier in their childhood. And so my question to you is that if you're talking to someone who may have been a victim of these traumas, again, whether it's physical abuse or sexual abuse by a friend, loved one, babysitter, etc., what kind of advice would you give them?
Well, one, I would give them advice that, we all can heal, but we have to start somewhere. So one, getting support, What I know about our community is that after enslavement, all we had was churches. And churches has been a great place, but now we're recognizing that we need something more specific to be able to heal all of the traumas. And not only that, the traumas we still deal with.
Right.
You know, to go into a place and be followed around, that's traumatic. Have microaggressions, that's traumatic on top of your own traumas, right?
Right.
And a lot of times people have suppressed those so long, and why you see them coming up is maybe you have the space to be able to heal now. And so what do you do with that is you have to get into places that are healing people. You can go to healing circles. I'm a big believer, personally for myself, in meditation and breath work. We probably don't even realize that most of the time we're holding our breath, even though we're breathing, and that's the most essential thing in our lives, is to be able to take a breath and be able to lean into the pain that you have had and know that it's okay to feel, it's okay to cry. Now, it's not okay to get mad and tear up everything, but
Right.
but learning skills to be able to deal with your emotions.
Absolutely. And so, Wes, you've been in sales and business for quite some time.
Yes.
And so if you're talking to a young entrepreneur that's thinking about, getting out there trying to chart their own course, what advice would you give?
The first advice is something I've learned. I make a lot of statements in reference point, and it's most of us, fear is disguised.
Absolutely.
I've often said, fear puts your focus on appearance rather than potential, which you have, which all of us have.
Right.
And prevents you from taking risk. And risk is something you must take in order to accomplish your goals and dreams. So the first advice I will give that young man is that he must take risk. And secondly, he must have a belief in order to basically get rid of that fear. So you don't know what's there until you take action.
Right.
So so that's what I will do. But also times they need a hand. As we always say, you need a hands up rather than a hand out.
Right.
So those are two basic things I will tell that young man or that young woman, is to align themselves in the belief system, and that is reading books. That is finding a sort of a mentorship or anyone that can participate, and it exists. And in doing so, that belief system transcends, and then you take action, and it eliminates that fear. And that is the biggest thing I can say.
Well, I tell people all the time, I think the fear of failure is the number one prohibitor to people really achieving their success.
Yes.
And I always kind of make this comparison, to success being like a pot of gumbo, right? and failure and fear, all that goes into that pot, but you just have to accept the fact that you may fail.
Absolutely. It's almost like it's like fleas in a jar. There's this analogy of fleas in a jar, which means that if you take a jar and you put fleas in that jar and cover it, those fleas are going to try to get out often.
Right.
And what's going to happen, they're going to keep it in their head.
Right.
And after a while, you can take that cover off and the flea will never jump out of the jar.
Right.
Well, I think that's the barrier that we all face. Growing up in this environment, we have a stop, and we don't know what's beyond that.
Right.
So taking that risk and going a little bit, you know what? You no longer flee in a jar.
Right.
No one is stopping you. You just have to go for it and give it a shot. And you're absolutely right about that.
I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. So my question to you all, and I think you may have different perspectives here, same question, but husband and wife, what is it like working together as partners, even though we know who the boss is? Yeah. Right? I have a talk show, and I'm out here by myself. I don't run this.
I think it's awesome because we're constantly talking. When we're creatives, we're always talking to each other. To have, like, he's my best friend, he's my business partner, and he's my husband. That's a win all three ways around. So
Right.
I think keeping things separate is the most important thing. We keep our business and then our marriage separate from that. We don't take that into our marriage, and so I think that way it works. And then also he has the things that he does and the things that I have, and we're just extra support for each other in those areas.
Gotcha.
Conversation, a lot of communication. There are things that you can throw out there that your wife will probably, that makes sense, and vice versa. And I think a lot of communication, a lot of conversation sets precedent to what you can do to succeed. And success comes in many different ways, not just monetarily,
Right.
but also in every aspect of life. And that's a goal. Once the kids are gone, you say, let's do what we got to do, and don't have them. They'll come back, but
Right.
yeah. So I think it's great. It's great having that partnership, just keeping everything separate.
So you talk about being purpose-driven.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about dealing with generational trauma. At the end of the day, what do you want your legacy to be as relate to fulfilling those purposes and accomplishing your goals?
That's a good question. I think we also often think about that, like we're on the little rocking chair together, and I'm looking out of what we've created, and my legacy would be to leave really culturally competent therapists who are equipped to deal with all types of people, Black, Brown, Indigenous people, recognize that trauma. If I could see that, if I could just see like a bunch of those, and then opportunities for Black people to go to therapy, that would be, I'll be happy sitting there.
Absolutely. Well, look, it has been a pleasure
Thank you.
having the two of you on Self-Made. I'm happy that you took time out of your busy schedule to be here with me.
Absolutely.
And I look forward to visiting your One Village once it's completed.
Lovely.
And so thank you so
Love to
very
have
much. And to my viewers, thank you for watching Self-Made with Dee Brown, CEO. And remember, without you, there's no me.